The research facility hummed with a quiet desperation that only those facing total extinction could understand. Seok-Ho Park wasn't a tall man, but he carried the weight of humanity's last hope in the creases of his weathered hands. Outside the reinforced windows, the sky looked different, a slate-grey reminder of the ongoing conflict that was slowly consuming Earth's remaining resources. He remembered the day everything changed. It wasn't a dramatic moment with explosions or heroic speeches. Just a simple conversation with his daughter Ji-un over breakfast, where she'd asked why grown-ups looked so worried. Her innocent question had triggered something deep within him, a resolve that would ultimately reshape human military strategy. The prototype sat on the workbench, a seemingly impossible machine that looked more like an intricate piece of scientific artwork than a weapon. Thin metal components gleamed under the fluorescent lights, each piece meticulously designed and redesigned countless times. Seok-Ho had sacrificed everything, his savings, his personal time, and nearly his entire career, to develop this concept. Military commanders had laughed when he first proposed the railgun strategy. Kinetic weapons, they'd mock. We're fighting an advanced alien civilization, not playing target practice. But Seok-Ho knew something they didn't. Traditional energy weapons were useless against the advanced shielding of their extraterrestrial opponents. Something fundamental needed to change. His team was small, but dedicated. Young engineers like Seon-woo, who believed more in possibilities than limitations, worked alongside veteran researchers who had seen countless failed projects. They were an unlikely group, some fresh out of university, others close to retirement, united by a single purpose: survival. The computational models were brutal, thousands of simulations, each one showing how conventional strategies would lead to humanity's complete annihilation. But within those cold digital predictions, Seok-Ho saw patterns, weaknesses in the alien defense systems that could be exploited with the right approach. Nights blended into days. Coffee became a constant companion, and the research facility transformed into a second home. Family photos lined the walls, a reminder of what they were fighting to protect. Ji-un's school projects, his wife's graduation picture, moments frozen in time that seemed both distant and immediate. When the first successful prototype test happened, it wasn't accompanied by cheering or celebration, just a profound silence as a tungsten rod traveled at hypersonic speeds, obliterating the test target in a way that defied previous understanding of weapon technology. Seok-Ho remembered exchanging a quiet look with Hyun-woo. They both knew this was more than just a weapon. This was hope. The military's initial skepticism slowly transformed into cautious interest. Reports from frontline units spoke of mounting losses, of entire planetary defenses crumbling under alien technological superiority. They needed something different, something unexpected. Seok-Ho's approach wasn't just about creating a weapon. It was about reimagining warfare itself. The railgun represented more than metal and physics. It symbolized human adaptability, our capacity to transform limitations into opportunities. Every calculation, every design iteration was a testament to human ingenuity. As evening approached, and most of his team had gone home, Seok-Ho would often sit alone in the lab, studying the prototype. The machine seemed to pulse with potential, a silent guardian of humanity's future. Outside, city lights flickered, a reminder of the millions who had no idea how close they were to either total destruction or remarkable salvation. His daughter's drawings were pinned near the workstation, colorful scribbles of spaceships and strange alien landscapes, innocent representations of a conflict she barely understood. But those drawings represented something pure: hope, imagination, a future worth fighting for. The seed of innovation wasn't just in the technology, it was in the people, in their collective determination to survive, to push beyond known boundaries, to imagine solutions where others saw only insurmountable challenges. Seok-Ho Park wasn't just developing a weapon, he was writing humanity's next chapter. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story? The Battle Forge, General Kane's Railgun Strategy Manual. Part 2. The Prototype's Whisper. The morning light crept through the lab's dusty windows, casting long shadows across scattered blueprints. and half-assembled components. Hyunwoo Kim arrived earlier than usual, a cup of strong black coffee in one hand and a worn notebook in the other. The prototype Railgun dominated the center of the workspace, a silent beast waiting to be understood. Engineering wasn't just a job for Hyunwoo. It was a calling that ran deeper than professional ambition. His grandfather had been a shipyard worker, teaching him that every complex problem could be solved with patience, creativity, and an understanding of fundamental principles. Those lessons echoed in every calculation, every delicate adjustment he made to Seok-ho's original design. The neural-linked targeting system was their most ambitious challenge. Traditional weapons relied on external guidance systems, but this was different. They were creating something that could think, adapt, and respond faster than human reflexes could comprehend. It wasn't just about launching a projectile. It was about creating a symbiotic relationship between machine and operator. Weeks of simulation after simulation revealed incremental improvements. Most would have been discouraged by the slow progress, but not this team. Each tiny breakthrough felt like a victory against an overwhelming challenge. They were essentially developing a language of communication between human intention and mechanical execution. During one late-night testing session, something unexpected happened. The prototype's computational core began processing targeting, scenarios that weren't programmed. It was learning, adapting, showing a form of intuitive intelligence that went beyond their initial designs. Hyunwoo remembered exchanging a look of pure amazement with Seok-ho, realizing they had created something truly revolutionary. The technical challenges were immense. How do you create a weapon that can calculate atmospheric interference, planetary rotation, gravitational pulls, and enemy movement simultaneously? Traditional computers would struggle, but their neural-linked system was different. It could process complex scenarios in microseconds, making calculations that would take traditional systems hours. Personal stories began weaving into their professional mission. Hyunwoo's younger brother was serving in the Planetary Defense Force, facing increasingly desperate battles against the alien invaders. Every adjustment to the prototype felt like a direct contribution to his brother's survival. Technology wasn't just an abstract concept, it was deeply personal. Military observers started showing interest. Initial skepticism transformed into cautious curiosity as preliminary test results began circulating through classified channels. A weapon that could potentially turn the tide of an interstellar conflict wasn't just a technological marvel, it was a beacon of hope. The team worked with a sense of urgency that transcended typical professional boundaries. They weren't just engineers or researchers. They were humanity's last line of defense, crafting a solution that could potentially save millions of lives. Lunch breaks became strategy discussions. Late nights turned into collaborative problem-solving sessions. Debugging. The neural interface proved to be their most complex challenge. Traditional programming logic didn't apply. They were essentially teaching a machine to think like a human, to anticipate, to adapt, to make split-second decisions that could mean the difference between survival and extinction. One breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ji-eun, Seok-ho's daughter, suggested a recursive learning algorithm based on a video game she was playing. Her childlike perspective provided a unique approach that the seasoned engineers had overlooked. It was a reminder that innovation could come from anywhere, that fresh perspectives often held the most transformative potential. As weeks turned into months, the prototype began to take shape. It was more than a weapon, it was a statement, a testament to human creativity, resilience, and our ability to transform seemingly impossible challenges into groundbreaking solutions. Hyunwoo would later reflect that they weren't just developing a railgun, they were writing a new chapter in human technological evolution, a whisper of potential that would soon become a thunderous declaration of human ingenuity. The prototype waited, patient and silent, ready to change everything. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story? The Battle Forge, General Kane's Railgun Strategy Manual. Part 3, First Blood. The Epsilon combat zone looked like a graveyard of broken dreams. Countless human ships drifted silently, punctured and lifeless, testament to the brutal efficiency of the alien invasion. Captain Jae-sung Lee gripped the control panel of the experimental railgun platform, his hands steady despite the chaos surrounding him. His journey to this moment wasn't typical. Born in a small coastal town, Jae-sung had watched his community struggle against economic challenges. Military service wasn't just a career, it was an opportunity to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The weight of those memories pressed against his chest as he prepared for humanity's most critical engagement. The ship's interior hummed with an electric tension. Young technicians monitored complex systems, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. Nobody spoke much. They didn't need to. Every person understood the stakes. This wasn't just another battle. This was potentially humanity's last stand. Shokho's prototype railgun was more than a weapon system. It represented years of research, countless sleepless nights, and the collective hope of an entire species. Jae-sung knew the technical specifications by heart. But understanding and executing were two different challenges. Communication channels crackled with incoming enemy signatures. Alien vessels moved with an almost mathematical precision. Their energy signatures unlike anything human scanners had previously encountered. Traditional defense protocols were useless. They needed something completely different. Target acquisition. "In 3 minutes," announced the sensor operator, her voice calm but tight with anticipation. Jae-sung remembered his training. Breathe, focus, calculate. The neural interface began syncing with his brain patterns, translating human intention into mechanical execution. It wasn't just about firing a projectile. It was about creating a perfect harmony between human intuition and technological precision. The first shot would determine everything. Alien vessels moved in complex formation, their defensive capabilities, having decimated previous human attack strategies. Energy shields flickered like intricate electronic landscapes, seemingly impenetrable, but Seokho's team had discovered something unique, a computational approach that could predict and exploit microscopic vulnerabilities. "Targeting sequence initiated," the computer announced. Jae-sung felt a strange calmness. Years of training, months of preparation, and generations of human resilience converged in this singular moment. The railgun's tungsten penetrator waited, compressed energy ready to be unleashed at hypersonic speeds. 3 enemy cruisers moved in tight formation, their weapons charging. Traditional human strategies would involve multiple ships, complex maneuvers, potential massive casualties. But this was different. One precise shot could change everything. The neural interface synchronized perfectly. Jae-sung wasn't just an operator. He became part of the weapon system. Computational predictions merged with human intuition. Planetary rotation, gravitational interference, enemy movement patterns, all calculated in microseconds. A single tungsten round launched. Time seemed to slow. The projectile moved faster than light could track. Energy shields that had previously seemed invincible suddenly looked fragile. One cruiser split in half, then another. The third erupted in a silent explosion, its complex systems utterly obliterated. Absolute silence followed. Battlefield communication channels remained stunned. No celebratory shouts, just pure, profound disbelief. Humanity had just demonstrated that innovation could overcome seemingly insurmountable technological barriers. Jae-sung exhaled. The first blood had been drawn, and everything was about to change. "Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story?" The Battleforge, General Kane's Railgun Strategy Manual. Part 4. The strategy unfolds. The military academy stood as a testament to human adaptation. Instructor Minky Park walked between rows of eager cadets, his hands holding a worn manual that would redefine warfare. Outside the classroom windows, the city's skyline told a story of recovery, rebuilding after years of brutal interstellar conflict. Minky wasn't just teaching a technical manual. He was sharing a philosophy of survival, of human resilience. Each page represented more than mathematical calculations or weapon specifications. They were chapters of hope, written in the blood and determination of those who had fought before. Money. Railgun strategy wasn't complex, it was revolutionary. Traditional military thinking had always focused on overwhelming firepower and defensive capabilities, but Seok Ho's approach was different. It was about precision, about understanding the enemy's weaknesses at a fundamental level. Cadets listened with an intensity that went beyond typical military training. These weren't just students. They were the next generation of defenders, carrying the weight of humanity's survival on their shoulders. Each lecture felt like a sacred transmission of knowledge. Warfare is no longer about who has the most weapons, Min-Ki would explain, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. It's about who can think differently, who can adapt, faster than the enemy can predict. The manual broke down complex concepts into digestible insights. Computational targeting wasn't just about mathematical precision, it was about understanding the human element. How does intuition merge with technology? How can human creativity overcome seemingly insurmountable technological barriers? Training. Simulations became laboratories of innovation. Cadets weren't just learning to operate weapons, they were learning to think like adaptive systems. Each exercise challenged traditional military doctrine, pushing boundaries of what was considered possible. Min-Ki remembered the early days of development, late-night conversations with Seok Ho, where they'd challenge each other's assumptions. Those discussions weren't just about weapon design, they were about reimagining human potential. The neural-linked targeting system became more than a technological marvel. It represented a new way of thinking about human-machine interaction. Each cadet learned to become one with their weapon system, understanding that true effectiveness came from symbiotic relationship, not mere mechanical operation. Practical demonstrations told stories more powerful than any lecture. Retired combat veterans would visit, sharing experiences that transformed theoretical knowledge into lived understanding. They spoke of battles where a single, precise shot changed entire conflict trajectories. Military leadership initially approached the new strategy with skepticism. Years of traditional combat doctrine don't change overnight, but results spoke louder than arguments. Each successful engagement demonstrated the effectiveness of the new approach. The manual wasn't just about weapons, it was about understanding complex systems, about reading subtle patterns that traditional strategies would miss. Min-Ki taught his students to see beyond the obvious, to understand that true strategic advantage came from intellectual flexibility. Personal stories became integral to the training. Cadets would share family histories, relatives lost in previous conflicts, communities devastated by alien invasions. These weren't just academic exercises. This was about protecting everything they loved. Technology and human spirit merged in ways previous generations couldn't imagine. The railgun strategy represented more than a weapon system. It was a philosophy of survival, of understanding that human creativity could overcome seemingly impossible challenges. As training sessions concluded, Min-Ki would often look at his students and see something remarkable. Not just future soldiers, but architects of a new human approach to conflict. They weren't just learning to fight, they were learning to think, to adapt, to survive. The strategy was unfolding, and humanity was ready. Would you like me to continue with the final part of the story? The Battle Forge, General Kane's Railgun Strategy Manual. Part 5. Echoes of Victory. The university lecture hall buzzed with an energy that transcended typical academic settings. Sojin Park stood at the podium, her grandmother's old research notes carefully spread before her. These weren't just historical documents, they were a living testament to human survival. Outside, the city gleamed, a metropolis rebuilt from the ashes of interstellar conflict. Reconstructed buildings stood as silent monuments to human resilience, each structure telling a story of recovery and hope. Sujin's lecture wasn't just about history, it was about remembering. Her family's legacy was etched into every page of the Railgun Strategy Manual. Generations of engineers, soldiers, and dreamers had contributed to this moment. The story wasn't about a single weapon or a single battle. It was about humanity's capacity to transform challenges into opportunities. Students listened with a reverence that went beyond academic curiosity. These were children of survivors, inheritors of a legacy that had nearly been erased. Each face in the lecture hall represented a miracle, generations that might never have existed. Innovation isn't about technology, Sujin would explain, her voice carrying the passion of her grandfather Seokho. It's about understanding, about seeing possibilities where others see only limitations. The manual had become more than a military document. It was a cultural artifact, a blueprint of human potential. Museums displayed early prototypes, schools taught the strategic principles, and every military academy considered it required reading. Personal. Stories intertwined with technological innovation. She would share moments from her family's history, late-night discussions, breakthrough moments, the human connections that made scientific progress possible. Technology wasn't cold or distant. It was deeply personal. Veteran engineers who had worked on the original project would occasionally visit. Their stories bridged generations, connecting past struggles with present achievements. They weren't just lecturing, they were passing down a living history. The conflict that had threatened human existence was now a distant memory. Diplomatic channels had eventually opened, transforming potential annihilation into complex interstellar negotiations. But the Railgun strategy had fundamentally changed how humanity approached potential threats. Sujin's research continued her grandfather's work, not just preserving history, but pushing technological boundaries. Each new discovery was a conversation with the past, a way of honoring those who had fought and sacrificed. Military academies around the world used the strategy manual as a foundational text. But it was more than a technical document. It was a philosophy of human potential, of understanding that creativity and adaptability were our most powerful weapons. Her grandmother would often tell stories about those early days. The fear, the uncertainty, the moments of breakthrough that seemed almost impossible. Those personal narratives gave context to the technical achievements, reminding everyone that behind every innovation was human emotion. The university's research center bore her grandfather's name, a constant reminder of the journey. Young engineers would walk through halls lined with original prototypes, understanding that innovation was a continuous conversation across generations. Global defense strategies had been permanently transformed. The railgun approach had become a standard model of technological thinking, adaptable, precise, understanding that true strength came from intellectual flexibility rather than brute force. During breaks, students would gather around Sujin, asking questions that went beyond technical specifications. They wanted to understand the human story, the emotional journey that had transformed humanity's approach to survival. The manual wasn't just about a weapon, it was about hope, about understanding that when faced with seemingly insurmountable challenges, human creativity could find a way forward. As evening light filtered through the lecture hall windows, Sujin would conclude her presentation. Not with technical details, but with a simple truth her grandfather had always believed. Our greatest weapon is our ability to imagine something better. The echoes of victory continued, and humanity kept evolving. Would you like me to elaborate on any part of the story?